Every single day, across the globe, millions of people wake up with one goal: to shop. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in consumer goods are transferred every day. In the daily quest for materialistic conquest, every shopper has likely encountered one face across a broad range of products. Perhaps you were looking for that new shirt you needed. Maybe you'll get it because Robert Pattinson has it. Or how about that necklace to accessorize with? Wasn't Johnny Depp on GQ with that not too long ago? How about a brand new action figure for the shelf? Or a new throw pillow for your mum? Or some fresh kicks, perhaps? New shoes are always a must. Or a tote bag because the environment is important. Maybe you're a new mother and need a onesie too. Or perhaps you need your fill of modern art. And of course, you need some new fresh swimwear. And sometimes you just need some irony in your life. How did this man, a man with ideals and dreams, turn into a commodified image that is both lionized and demonized in a modern culture, while simultaneously separated from his philosophy? How did Che Guevara turn from a man into a myth?
Comandante Che
Che Guevara.
Ernesto Che Guevara.
Major Ernesto Che Guevara.
He is a Marxist, a soldier, a physician, and the power behind Fidel Castro.
What is the most important quality for a revolutionary to possess?
El amor.
Love.
Love.
Love of humanity, of justice and truth. A real revolutionary goes where he is needed.
Ernesto Che Guevara was born to aristocratic parents in Rosario, Argentina on May 14, 1928. Using their leftist politics and passion for knowledge as a guide, Ernesto grew up enjoying the works of Karl Marx, Jean-Paul Sartre, Rudyard Kipling, and many other intellectual works. In his late adolescence and early adult years, Guevara embarked on 2 cross-continent motorcycle trips throughout South America. Throughout these travels, Guevara, who had earned the nickname Che at this point, was moved by the poverty and inequality he witnessed, and sought to find the right cause to mobilize the communist ideals that had been fermenting in his mind. Then, in the early 1950s, he found his cause. With the aid of the United States government, Fulgencio Batista initiated his dictatorship of Cuba. His tyrannical regime oversaw the murder of hundreds of civilians as his administration virtually pillaged the small island nation. A small group of dissenters attempted to launch a coup in 1953. Failing, the rebels retreated to Mexico to lick their wounds. When Che arrived in Mexico City in 1954, he was soon introduced to a man who would become a lifelong compatriot: Fidel Castro. Fidel had been the leader of the previous group of rebels in Cuba and was now forming a new movement with his brother Raúl. Realizing their ideologies matched up perfectly, Che and Fidel set sail on an old leaky ship with 80 other men in November 1956.
Fidel had extraordinary faith that once we left for Cuba, we would make it there. And that once we made it to Cuba, we would fight.
Leading guerrilla troops for over 2 years, Guevara showed incredible prowess as a rookie commander, as his troops were essential to overthrowing the country by the dawn of 1959.
Havana,
January 1st, 1959.
Fidel Castro desde Oriente, a Batista combatió. Fidel Castro desde Oriente, a Batista combatió. Y en la patria libertó con sus hombres dignamente. ¡Que viva Fidel! ¡Que viva Fidel! ¡Que viva Fidel! ¡Y la bandera cubana!
The 26 de Julio, the 26th of July movement, led by Fidel Castro, had turned out the tyrant Batista. To the Cuban people and to the admiring world, there could be no better way to start the new year. The revolutionary leader now took to the public square in Havana to tell the people what victory meant. There would soon be general elections. There would be a free press, beholden to no one. There would be land for the peasants. This revolution, Fidel Castro told the people standing in the sun of the Prado, is as native as the Cuban palms. But first there was further bloodletting to be done. The world had mixed emotions about such violent retribution, as convicted torturers and collaborators fell with a maximum of publicity and a minimum of due process of law.
Outside Havana's presidential palace, hundreds of thousands rally at the call of revolutionary leader Fidel Castro, who estimated their number at 1 million. Most of the throng wears the colors of Castro's 26th of July movement. They are in an exultant mood as the man who overthrew the Batista dictatorship calls on them to approve the public trials and executions of pro-Batista figures guilty of war crimes and atrocities. The executions, some 250 to date, have been widely criticized by many as too hasty and summary, even if justified. Says Castro, the Cuban revolutionary government has no reason to offer explanations to America or to anyone except the people of Cuba. Castro asks his audience if it favors the summary court-martial and gets his answer in a roar of approval. Cuba has spoken. Despite outside protests, the executions will continue.
Political orientation was carried out under the orders of Che Guevara, an Argentine with a Botticelli angel's face and a scholar of Marx.
It was Fidel who assigned Che to the La Cabaña prison fortress for 5 months. Guevara would review the appeals of those convicted of war crimes by tribunals. During his time in charge of La Cabaña, Che oversaw the executions of 55 men. While the details of these events have been deeply skewed in modern times, they have been a major aspect of Che's legacy. Interested in flexing his more intellectual abilities, Che stepped into the role of microphone and diplomat for the new communist regime of Cuba. His most notable stop was made in 1964. On December the 11th, Guevara represented Cuba at the United Nations.
Industries of Cuba. I invite him to address the Assembly.
Determinados compromisos que culminaron en la retirada de cierto tipo de armas, que las continuas agresiones de aquel país, como el ataque mercenario de Playa Girón y las amenazas de invadir nuestra patria.
Over the course of the speech, he covered Cuba's new motives on a global scale, elaborated upon the relations with other nations, and even took the time to scold the United States for their intolerant policies towards blacks. But it was his brief confirmation and support for executions that was most noticed.
Fusilamientos, sí, hemos fusilado, fusilamos y seguiremos fusilando mientras sea necesario.
In an effort to remove himself from the limelight and move back toward his goal of global revolution, Che transported himself to the Congo early in 1965 to help the natives fight off the Belgian imperial master. Initially optimistic about the prospects of furthering his global communist cause, Guevara quickly became disillusioned due to the poor performance of his troops. After only a few months, Che left for a discreet recovery in Europe. After a few months on vacation, Che set his sights on a new target, Bolivia. The media lost track of him and speculated about his whereabouts. Meanwhile, Che had shaved his beard and parted the top of his head, in addition to dyeing his hair grey. People later speculated that Fidel had attempted to forbid Che from going to Bolivia in 1967.
Teníamos excelentes relaciones de amistad, de confianza, y el Che realmente les prestaba mucha atención a los puntos de vista, a los criterios que yo le daba, porque siempre mantuvimos una confianza y una amistad hasta el final. Pero aquella era su idea. La otra cosa era prohibirle, y eso no estaba dentro del tipo de relaciones que teníamos nosotros, ni por razones de Estado, ni imponerle un criterio.
Using a force of about 50 men, Guevara found himself with better equipped, better trained, and more spirited forces than he had worked with in the Congo. As such, the group saw many early successes against the Bolivian army. With the word out that Che had surfaced in Bolivia, the CIA sent operative Felix Rodriguez to help locate Guevara. Following an intense firefight, Che was wounded and captured by Bolivian forces on October the 9th. CIA agent Rodriguez followed orders from the Bolivian president to execute Guevara. Rodriguez told the executor, Mario Teyron, to make the wounds seem like they were suffered in combat. Teyron entered the hut where Che was being kept. Che stood from the floor and exclaimed, "Shoot me, you coward! You are only going to kill a man." Teyron then proceeded to fire 9 rounds into Guevara. The Bolivian army told the press that Guevara had been killed in combat rather than executed, in an effort to make his death seem less heroic. They then made a fatal mistake that propelled Che's status to another level. The kind of mistake that caused Che to be dubbed a legend on the day he died. by placing his shaggy-haired, scraggly-bearded body dressed in scraps in a peaceful repose after being martyred for a global cause. The Bolivian government inadvertently portrayed Che Guevara as Christ-like. And like that, Ernesto Che Guevara, the man so filled with passion, spirit and controversy, had had his life extinguished in a flash. So how did Ernesto Guevara go from life and blood to a legendary image seemingly overnight? How did Che become a global icon? The answer lies on a piece of celluloid snapped by Alberto Corda through the lens of his camera on an overcast day in 1960. On stage for a state funeral following a tragic explosion on a freighter in Havana, Che Guevara scanned the millions out to grieve for those lost in the incident. Corda, a photographer famous in his native Cuba, spotted the beret-clad revolutionary and took the iconic photograph. While the image went initially unnoticed, in 1968, Irish artist Jim Fitzpatrick transformed the photo into an Andy Warhol-style pop culture portrait. It was then that his image exploded. Fitzpatrick's rendition of Che can be seen at every social justice rally across the planet, whether it be on flags being waved at the Occupy Wall Street movement, signs being carried by protesters throughout the Arab Spring, and even on t-shirts in the communist nation of China.
都係因為呢個政府呢係唔係由人民選嘅？點解呢？就係因為呢喺1989年呢係有好多北京嘅學生呢係有100萬人呢大遊行，我諗相信呢好多人都捐過錢添。當日點解要遊行呢？唔係有人派。
To be able to display a communist hero who is nonetheless clearly hostile to these forms of authority, or ostensibly so, is quite a clever thing to do, because what's the Chinese Communist Party going to do? Say, take off that badge? Or stop wearing that t-shirt? They can't very well do that, but they know when they see him doing it that he's not on their side. A Maoist bureaucrat would have to realize that a young person wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt was not an admirer of the system. I don't know whether this is irony or paradox or just a clash of images or just a generational question. But of those four choices, I think the generational would be the decisive one, because he will always be the spokesperson in image of rebellious youth.
But naturally, not everyone thinks Che was all gumdrops and lollipops.
Now, you've seen his face everywhere, maybe on your son or daughter's t-shirts, but hopefully you will soon realize why that has got to stop. In fact, all of this is Che. Ernesto Che Guevara.
There is the famous T-shirt. It is so famous, in fact, that you can buy T-shirts that have images of the T-shirt on it. Che's image, it sells beer, it sells lighters, it sells belt buckles, it sells baby onesies. One of the things that is fascinating about the cult of Che is that it effectively thrives in the absence of any kind of historical understanding.
For example, look around at an anti-war rally, and you'll probably see Che.
Che was a self-taught revolutionary who was instrumental in Castro's takeover of Cuba. He became known as the Butcher of La Cabana prison in revolutionary Cuba, where he personally oversaw the execution of anywhere from 175 to several hundred people. He's implicated in thousands of deaths that come after that.
14,000 men and boys were executed in Cuba during the 1960s.
He said that his dream was to become a killing machine. He said to his revolutionary comrades, if they weren't sure of someone's loyalty, if in doubt, kill him. These are the realities that we need to understand about Che.
Much like his supporters, Che's detractors select or skew certain elements of his life to fit their own agenda. At the same time, some even bastardize his image and ideas for personal gain.
Through the block and everything that's fly, I'm like Che Guevara with bling on, I'm complex. I never claimed to have.
While not everything may be fair, everyone can have a viewpoint on Che, even if they don't necessarily know who he is.
I guess the people that I associated the image with punk rockers, like young people who were, of the hippie mindset, and that's why his image actually reminded me a lot of Bob Marley, and so I actually thought he was a musician.
Ernesto Che Guevara, the man, died in a Bolivian hut in October 1967. Che Guevara, the mythical icon that has been the omnipresent figure behind nearly every social justice movement of the last 46 years, lives on as long as the fight for social justice lives on. There are those that romanticize his legacy. There are those who seek to misrepresent his life. There are those who manipulate his image for profit while ignoring his ideologies. It seems fitting that a man who lived such a complex, contradictory, and tumultuous life has had such a complex, contradictory, and tumultuous legacy constructed around him. Understanding Che Guevara as an icon is nearly as difficult to comprehend as Che Guevara the man. The powerful gaze of a passionate, intellectual, and multifaceted revolutionary who first stared out over a Cuban crowd on an overcast March morning in 1960, who later had his glazed eyes stare past snapping shutters while lying in a Christ-like repose following his execution, will continue to observe the fight for social change across the globe. Whether he would support these movements or not are out of his hands. Che Guevara is a modern mythological figure.
Message